Golf Business Live. Here's Jay, Karen, and Don Rea.
Well, welcome everybody to Golf Business Live Friday edition. I'm Jay Karen, CEO of the National Golf Course Owners Association, and I have with me board member Don Rea, owner of Augusta Ranch Golf Club in Mesa, Arizona, PGA member, was on the board of the PGA as well for 4 years. Welcome, my boots on the ground guy that sees what's really happening out there in the golf industry, right?
Yeah, no doubt. And as more golf courses open, I'm getting a lot more phone calls from my fellow PGA members and golf course owners to say, Don, so how would you address certain things, right? I mean, you don't know until, the ball is snapped. Then you really feel like what the play you called is going to work or not. So
I look forward to 45 minutes of sports analogies. This is going to be great. Because we have actually a special guest today with us. We will be joining us in about 15 minutes or so is Seth Waugh, the CEO of the PGA of America, who's a good friend to you and us, and we look forward to chatting with him about some initiatives that are happening out here, especially the new back to golf kind of guidelines on for the industry on how to comport with what the CDC likes to see and what the White House wants to see as far as rolling out businesses and getting us back to business. So look forward to chatting with Seth here soon. But to everybody there watching, as a reminder, we have a Q&A module that you can just click the button, ask a question. We have NGCOA staff that's watching and answering questions for you. Don and I, and even Seth, will try to get to some of your questions personally on the show today. But if you have a technical question or want to make a comment or something that can be answered offline, the staff will be taking care of that in the Q&A module. So we've got Dave Barton, our Director of Education Programs, kind of paying attention to that. So appreciate Dave. So Don, all right, so tell me about the week. What did you see that's different than last week?
Well, it has been crazy. I will tell you, I've been using my stick. And you know how a football helmet, you get stickers on your football helmet when you get tackles? I'm putting little marks on my stick every time I poke somebody in the belly because they're not 6 foot away from whoever they're playing with. So I'm telling you, you need to get the stick. If you're reopening, walk around with that stick. It's a fun way, but it ensures everybody's going to keep that 6 foot spacing. Yeah, a crazy week here. I mean, some great news. At first was very disappointed. That Chase has been my bank for 20 years, and I'd gone through the PPP program with them. It seemed like a sure thing because I've been with them for so long. All my credit card money goes to them. In my opinion, I think I'm a large account. Well, it turned out I'm a very, very small account when it comes to the big banks like that. And so when I started reading about the terminology they're using to their clients, that maybe you're going to get it, but in actuality you were never going to get it because they were giving it to their big customers. I'm happy to announce that today, just found out about 2 hours ago, that we were approved for the PPP. So for everybody, I'm about a $50,000 every 15 days payroll type place here. So we requested $232,000 and we're approved for that. So that's a good time. Talked to a lot of PGA professionals who received, and superintendents and LPGA professionals, and even some association staff people who've received some Golf Emergency Relief Fund money. So that's nice to know that that's actually happening. And so golf courses are opening up. Money is getting distributed to some people who really need it in a tough time. The government's come through for me. Chase has come through, even though I was not very nice to them for the last 48 hours when I was telling my wife about what was happening to us. The stick's working, and I installed all my foot pulls on the doors here at Augusta Ranch, which was over 100 degrees this past weekend. So that was nice, keeping the flies out. And, the Governor Ducey came on yesterday, our governor, and said, yeah, restaurants are still going to be closed, Jay, for probably another, 10 to 15, maybe even 20 days, but everybody else is still open for business. And I know a lot of my friends out there in the industry, their golf courses are opening for the first time today and over the next 7 days. So good times. And I think they're truly going to see what I've witnessed, which is a lot of people very appreciative for the game of golf and the things that the operators and the people who are in the golf business do for them to enjoy their life.
So, in the NGCOA world, we've been seeing a lot of dialogue this week on golf cars and, the restrictions either to walking only. We talked about this last week a little bit, and how walking only restrictions are causing some conflict as far with those with disabilities, and can they use a golf car and all that. But this week it was about the divider, and in a lot of golf courses jumping on the bandwagon to put dividers between the driver and the passenger as an extra precaution to prevent this, someone from sneezing or breathing on someone in the golf car next to them, I suppose. So we're seeing some innovative folks come out with solutions to do that. it's an interesting topic because, and I've talked to all three golf car manufacturers about this as well, just to kind of get their pulse on it. I see golf courses just taking matters from their own hands and try to say, look, we want to be safe here. But we also know what's behind this too, is that it's not sustainable financially as well if you don't have a fleet of cars that can handle one car per person. That you're gonna force the inventory to be cut in half based on your car size instead of what you can handle, right? And so, looking at that, it's an interesting issue because how do we make sure that a golf car divider, plexiglass or some divider, will kind of pass the test with those that are in authority to say, yes, you can start riding again. Not only that, you can ride 2 people per car. What do we need to do you think, to possibly gain approval? Because we have to open this up, in the sense of, if we can find a safe way to do it, what's the answer here? Because it's not going to be financially sustainable for very long if we have to do the 1 rider per car for the entire season or through the fall, if it comes to that point. It's a fearful situation. So what do you think?
Yeah. Well, it's the American way, right? Necessity is the mother of invention. And I think as others get out there and try these different things, right? My 6-foot stick, it's just a way that I'm trying to make sure everybody's safe. These dividers, I say do it. I mean, come up with whatever you think will work. Take some pictures, get some information from the golfers that are playing your golf course and see. At the end of the day, these legislators and these mayors, these leaders of our communities and our cities and states, they're looking for as much guidance as we can give them. And we are the boots on the ground. So they're not going to come up with the ideas. And if they do, they might not work well. It's like an architect never builds a house, right? They just design it. We are literally the construction workers of the golf industry. And so what I say is I try all those things, see how it's working. In Arizona, nobody's really filling that need. I talked to my buddy who's from New Jersey. They're trying everything they possibly can. So plexiglass, visqueen, whatever you want to try to do, if it's making people feel comfortable, something that you can take some pictures on, send them to the staffs of these legislators and say, hey, these are some things we're trying. You never know what could come of it. And certainly, like you said, Jay, calling your club car or your E-Z-Go, whoever, Yamaha rep, and saying, what are you guys doing? What do you think about this? They're always looking for sites to beta test things. Be one of those sites. Be an innovator. That's what's going to get us through this stuff.
What do you think? Let's prognosticate a little bit here. That if some of these restrictions persist for a while, like restaurants may be able to open, and they have to have, like I think the state of Texas just is allowing restaurants to open, but they can only cap themselves at 25% capacity. Okay, so that means you're going to have to change the physical plant of your restaurant space and have a quarter of the tops out there. You can see how you can construct that in the restaurant context. A golf car, the golf cars and the inventory of all this, it's not. I mean, I'm having trouble seeing how we're going to get through some of this financially if we're limited to 1 person per car, and because we've become a riding golf society for the most part. Everybody knows the value of walking, no question about it. More people are probably walking now than ever because of necessity, in that sense. But it's still an economic engine of the golf course. So how do we check both boxes here, keep this thing economically sustainable, but also make sure that health folks are satisfied with our response? Because this could last a while. If a restaurant, for example, has to operate at 25% capacity for the next 8 months, some will say, why are we even open? 25% revenue can't cover our fixed costs, can't cover our variable costs on even that stuff, right? So I'm concerned about what needs to happen on the golf cart question, and what can we do maybe as a national association. And we'll bring Seth on to talk about this a little bit. Maybe he's got some ideas on how to push on this so that we keep the economy flowing at the golf course at the same time adhering to standards that are approved.
Yeah, I think everybody tries to be super safe at first, and I'm with you. Where's the new normal? I'm not sure where it's going to be. Right now, there's 1 person per cart, 2 carts per every 15 minutes is what some states are requiring. I think at some point, like here, remember at Augusta Ranch, we were going, hey, if you rode together, you can ride. That's the way it goes. You're in the same car, you can be in the same cart. Then we backed up a little bit and said, well, if you live together, I think at some point it's going to be very comfortable to say, listen, if you rode together to the golf course, you can ride in the same golf car. That could be the new normal, because if you don't know the person you're playing with, you might not want to sit next to them whether there's a divider or not. You know, I think the divider's kind of cool, but if I don't know that person, it's even more weird. I'm in my, you know, get smart kind of silent. What is it? Was it cone of silence that they had on Get Smart a long time ago?
What's Get Smart? What is Get Smart?
Yeah, right. Oh, God, no, see, Seth will know what smart was. He'll know for sure. But I will say that I think there will be a new normal there. I don't think anybody needs to panic yet. I think some of these solo type of carts will become more prevalent. Heck, maybe that'll allow some fivesomes so that we can, hey, if you want to be a fivesome, you got to take a solo cart. Maybe that will increase capacity. But if we're going to bring down how many tee times we have or tables we have in our restaurants, that's certainly going to affect revenue. So we have to be careful. So all I would say is, you know, once again, don't panic, wash your hands, and let's just make sure that whatever rules we set up are things that we're comfortable with going forward. And I think if you come to the golf course together, you can ride the same cart together. It's probably where we'll land.
Also, you know, I think this is a testament to, or at least it's an example of where the marketplace comes up against regulation. The marketplace has to survive. It will find a way to either work within the system, work enough within the system to be compliant, all that kind of stuff. I just think we'll see that naturally happening. We're already seeing it happening right now. I mean, we're not waiting for regulations on some of this stuff. You got some of the companies making this stuff. Golf course operators are making this and trying to move on it. So, you know, in the 30,000 foot, you know, arc of history, kind of, you know, look at this, the marketplace will figure it out. I just, that's just the way it works, right?
No, it's the free economy. It's a perfect segue to bring Seth on, right? I mean, I love one of his quotes is, you got to have a brain and a soul to get through this. And I thought that's hey,
cool, without further ado,
why
don't we bring him on? Hey, there's the man. Good afternoon.
How we doing? How are you?
We were doing pretty well, you know, but now I think we're going to do a little better. But welcome to the show, Seth. We appreciate you being part of this. We've got, you know, I think scores of people watching right now, but you know, we'll make sure that this gets distributed widely through social media. So, and we're recording this, so you got to watch what you say. I know you get very spicy on Friday afternoons.
Yeah, well, with any luck, you have a delete button too.
Hey, so why don't we jump in? And by the way, we've got questions that are in the queue. We'll get to some of those. We'll knock those out as a team when we take a little pause from our conversation. But you heard us talking about the golf car situation, and that the reality is that the golf car revenue, without the golf car revenue, you know, that's just caused more suffering to a golf course, right? It's become an integral part of their business. Plus, they have lease payments to make, right, on those golf cars. And so, you know, what do you think you see? Where do you see this moving if we're under a one person per car restriction, or, you know, like Don said, you have to live together or have come in the same vehicle together in order to share a car together? If that persists for a good while, there's not enough supply out there right now, from what I understand, to allow golf courses to be at full capacity if they're running on low inventory of the golf cars. What do you think?
Well, you know, I think it's like any golf shot makes somebody happy, right? And so maybe this could be really good news for Club Corps and others. But you know, kidding aside, you know, or we should turn ventilator factories into golf cart factories, right? And pump them out. Look, I think a couple things, and you guys touched on a lot of this, and Don obviously said it in terms of innovation. And you know, we're an industry full of entrepreneurs and independent contractors, right? And so everybody's used to figuring it out, and I think they will. I think, you know, a couple things. One is, you know, this is, you know, the good news is we're getting open, right? And so we can worry about kind of what isn't perfect in this, or we can kind of figure out and be grateful for not being a restaurant, or not being an NBA team, or not being a lot of other places that are, you know, shut, right? Like I've sadly lived through a few crises. You know, ran a bank where we lost the building in 9/11, and ran the same bank during the financial crisis. And look, the solution here is the total opposite, where we are always trying to create activity. Now you're sort of the cure is economic suicide, right? You're trying to kill the disease before you kill the patient. And so the good news is, again, we've got some rules and some ability to make some revenues, and hopefully enough to kind of get people back. And within that, you try to maximize. So just listening to your conversation, I'd say a couple things. One of the ideas that we had, and sort of, you drive to the golf course together, Don, your point, is in the same case that you have red flags for ADA or handicap carts, put a green flag, because that's a husband and a wife, father and a son, somebody is cohabitating. I can imagine a world where we're starting to do testing in a much more robust way, where you have a card that says, hey, I have the antibodies, or I'm negative, right? And therefore you would be comfortable in riding in a two-person cart, right? So now you're going to add more and more people to that population that can ride in two-person carts. So it may not be perfect. You may still have to have, some single carts. If you're a single and you don't have your card, you're in a single cart, and maybe you have to pay double to have that single cart if you want to play golf today. So I think there's, different ways that this is going to happen. This is phase one. There is a phase two, and there is a phase three. I think we just got to be really careful about not going backwards. And so if we're part of the solution as opposed to part of the problem, that'll be good, right? And, the good news is, you referred to back to golf, is, we've gone and had this reviewed by the CDC. So they, we're not golf people. They were very appreciative that the industry put this together, came to them in a proactive way, put us sort of on the good folks list as opposed to the bad folks list. And, we want to protect that, right? We want to, nurture that and sort of have it, grow from here as opposed to somehow go back.
Yeah. Hey, Seth, let's talk a little bit about that. Let's set the table a little bit more, because some of the folks watching this may not know what that is. I mean, the media is just jumping on this Back to Golf initiative. And it was, a lot of the allied associations have been working tirelessly together since all this happened. And a few weeks back, we certainly said, hey, we need to work on a bit of a plan for re-entry for a lot of folks. And as you mentioned, golf is in a negative space usually with a lot of folks in Washington, as we've been working on for so many years through National Golf Day and We Are Golf. We had an opening here to, with the framework of President Trump's 3-phase plan to kind of open up businesses again. And what the allied associations have done is we've used that as a framework to say, all right, in these 3 phases, like phase 1 is no gatherings of more than 10 people. Phase 2 is no gatherings more than 50 people, and some other details. Well, let's use that as a framework to say, well, how does this apply to golf, where we can work with this, and as you mentioned, go get the CDC to review it and let us know what they see for improvements and so forth. They don't necessarily bless or approve this stuff. They don't give out their seal of approval like the American Dental Association does on toothpaste, right? But at least we had professionals review it. And so what we have out there is basically some guidelines for the industry to use in these different phases. And it's not meant to be public policy per se, but it's meant to help maybe lift some of the states where golf is still not being played, like in Maryland, and high restrictions in New Jersey, where they're saying every 15 minutes and only 2 people unless you're in the same family. That even phase 1 lifts them into a better place, a very safe, better place than where they are now. Let's comment a little bit about like how prescriptive is this supposed to be for golf course operators out there, or how much of this is to be guidelines that medical professionals have had a look at. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on there, obviously, and I'll try to address it all. The last thing I'd say on the card idea is another idea I had while you were listening there is, I do think the game was meant to be walked. I realize it's different than that in the United States, and obviously it's a big revenue item, and so, but the walking phenomena is a healthy one, right, and a good thing. The other idea I would have is, if you have 2 people to a cart, one has to be walking at all times. So if you have 2 sets of clubs on the back, and one's driving, one's walking, and the next hole that, you reverse it somehow so that you're actually only walking 9 holes would be another kind of idea that I would have just off the top of my head. In terms of back to golf, look, we looked at it early on and said, well, take a step back. If you think back, obviously this thing started, 7 or 8 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, we were in the throes of, representing our members, many of whom were on the front line, if you will, not, trying to restore people, but being put in uncomfortable situations. We had sections calling and saying, hey, can you shut down golf in this section? Because, we don't feel safe. We're in a hot zone, and we're being asked to, sort of interface in a way that we're uncomfortable with. Before that, it was how do we keep our courses open, right? And so you went through this kind of panic curve, right, where, in the beginning, it was sort of like, hey, we don't really understand this disease, so we want to stay open, we want revenues. And now the whole country is going through this, but we're a reflection of that. And then it came into the, oh my God, people are dying, and I don't want to be. I didn't sign up for that, right? To be an assistant pro and be put in harm's way. And so we're coming out of that. We've got hope, and as we knew, really in the middle of that panic, we started thinking about, look, we have natural advantages as an industry, right? As a game, how do we take advantage of that? We have social distancing. There isn't necessarily contact. You're played over 200 acres. So we kind of started thinking, and we hired an outside infectious disease expert and said, look, are we crazy? Or if, at its essence, if I or you, Jay, or Don, carry my own bag and walk on, a golf course, like that's, eminently safe, right? Like you can't argue with that, right? If it was a member guest with a cocktail party and, high fives, like that's not so much, right? And so what is it in between that, works in whatever phase you're in? So even in a stay-at-home state, we would say that you can do golf in a safe and responsible way. And that's where walking only came from, don't touch the flags, the rakes, all the stuff that we all now, take for granted, was things that, became best practices in order for people and the essence of this game to have a walk in the park, right? The other, health concern here is mental health and physical health, right? Like people want to do things. I'm sure everybody feels the same way, that you're dying to get outside and breathe some air. And so we sort of kept working on that and decided that, first of all, we wanted it to be an industry exercise and that's hard, right? Because there's, this industry, as we all know, does not suffer for lack of opinions, right? And everybody's got, an opinion, and rightfully so. And so hurting that sort of, process was important, but took a bit of time. And the second thing that we thought is that getting sign off is probably too strong. To get a review from the CDC would give it that much more credibility among states and among counties. And again, our perspective here wasn't really so much as to convince governors to reopen golf. It's to say, hey, if you want to create a safe activity and reopen parks and other things, then we're going to give you guidelines that we think you can do that, depending on your perspective of what phase you're in, where you are in the, in that continuum of, revenues versus safety, right? And so we have a guide now that says phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And look, we don't pretend that it's perfect, but we think it, gives, some semblance of order to something that didn't have any. And also just to sort of explain what the CDC's involvement has been here. They do not, as you say, give a good housekeeping seal of approval to anything. But what they will do is look at everything in a serious way. We had a really amazing conversation with them. They were very proactive. They did not understand golf, but they took the time to understand it and have come back with great feedback. And I think they'll be progressive. We can bring things back to them. Everybody's learning as we go here, right, with this whole thing. And so I think we got to start thinking about kind of how full is this glass, right? Okay, we're sort of open. I don't know what percentage you want to put on that. Obviously, food and beverage is a huge part, and carts are a big part, and whatever. But at least we have a start. So maybe we've got a third of our revenues, or in certain cases higher, I hope, in some cases lower. And, it justifies for membership clubs, membership fees, right? Because you can now use your facility. And we'll add takeout food, and then eventually restaurants will open, as Don talked about, in Arizona. So it's all going to happen. But I think this is a time to be somewhat grateful, to be thoughtful and entrepreneurial. We have no pride of authorship. We're making it up as we go along, right? Like this is not the last time we had a pandemic and we sort of, dusted off our protocol, right? Like this is all new, and a little bit patient and not too greedy, I think, because a few can screw it up for many, right? Like as you said earlier, we have this stigma of being an elitist sport, and oh, there's go those golfers. They're gonna infect the whole community because they don't care. And if people drive by and Instagram, people high-fiving or riding two to a cart, it's going to show up in a local paper, and suddenly we're going to become, the bad guys, right? As opposed to providing a service that people want. And the last thing I'd say on this front is, like, we also think this is a huge opportunity for the game, right? This could be a growth spurt, right? In the sense that obviously all the golfers that are pent up are going to come back and play, and that's great, right? So we'll have that kind of surge. But in addition to that, people are going to be, if we do it well, have a chance to look at it and go like, hey, you know what, that is different. Like, that is different than a lot of other sports, and I should give that a shot, because in the brave new world of distancing, that's a safe way to do it. And I can get some exercise, I can be in a beautiful place. And, we're making the argument that, okay, 10 people in a bar is a gathering. 10 people on a golf course is not. Okay, right. For now, it might be on a driving range, but we'll expand that, and you're talking about hundreds of people on hundreds of acres, right? Like, in that, a person an acre. Like, is that a reasonable way to think about it? Probably, right? Like, and so we have a lot of possibilities. We just got to be cool about it, I think.
Yeah. So what we'll do is, because we're almost at the 3:30 mark, guys, we'll get to some of these questions. So I think both of you will have some pretty interesting perspectives on the questions being asked by our audience here. So one of the questions here, getting on the golf cart thing again, is golf board, or those golf boards, golf skate caddies that are out there, are they going to replace the traditional golf cars? Now, I'll say the first thing is that there's no chance they'll replace them, because if you've ever been on one, they're fun, but they're a little athletic. To really stay on one of those things and maneuver and all that, it takes some athleticism, where, riding a golf car is a bit leisurely activity. So I could see these.
I think he's saying I can do it, but you probably couldn't, Don.
Yes, that's exactly what I was saying, right? No, I was not. Do you know what Get Smart is? We'll have that conversation later.
Yeah.
Anyway, so.
You obviously don't.
I know what it is. But I watch reruns.
I wasn't talking about the show, Don.
There you go.
So. You guys can chime in, but I don't think they'll replace. I think there's an opportunity here to supplement the experience, because if someone's saying, hey, listen, I wanted to do something by myself here, and there are bikes and motor caddies and golf boards, there's a whole host, a cottage industry of single rider, vehicles for this stuff, that there is definitely an opportunity, especially if some of this persists and the traditional golf car is having trouble meeting the demand. If they, because I know the factories are still going at these places, but if there's a demand issue or a supply issue, then there may be an opportunity here for these different devices. What do you guys think?
I can start, Seth, if you want. I mean, I think that, it's interesting. Innovation, the reason things happen is because, there's a need out there. I think at some point in the golf industry, there was a need to make it more hip, to make it more fun. So we've got fat scooters, we've got the skateboard type of things. How are we going to get these millennials to play golf? If we make it really cool, will they play? And so that created this industry of these kind of fun devices. You can go out there by yourself and play. I think at the end of the day, somebody wants to sit down and they want to put their drink in something. And so now I think these manufacturers know that there is now a necessity for a single person car that you can sit in, that is safe, that won't tip over. And there's a need for that. So I'm sure they're at their drawing boards coming up with things that aren't necessarily really hip and cool, but they're going to satisfy a need right now, which is people want to ride by themselves for a variety of reasons. And so I really look forward to see what those manufacturers do when they come up with those ideas, because I think in the long run, it is going to help golf. But
it reminds me of the shortage of toilet paper right now, Don. The bidet companies can't produce bidets fast enough as the toilet paper shortages are around, the grocery stores. So, if you're a bidet company and you're a bidet factory, you're probably pretty happy right now.
No doubt. All of a sudden everybody wants to sell me antiseptic and disinfectant, right? I mean, I couldn't get an order before, but now everybody's calling me up. But, hey, at the end of the day, it's still 10,000 steps and 2,000 calories. That's what our game's built on. It's being with your friends, walking down the fairway with them. I think we'll get back to that. But at the end of the day, hey, golf car manufacturers start coming up with some products. They don't have to be novel in any ways. They just have to be necessities, because that's where we're at with the new normal. And that's okay.
Yeah. So, the new normal, there are a couple of questions I'll combine into one. There's a question that says, what changes have you implemented that you think will still be in place 12 months from now? And one other guy is asking about waivers. You know, I remember the day when we signed golf car waivers. You know, to get the keys to the golf car, you had to sign kind of a waiver. And you know, are we going to see more of that to just try to release the golf course from liability? So you can't point the finger and say it was the golf course where I got COVID or what have you. Do you see that coming back as a new normal, or you know, what do you see sticking around for a while?
You want me to answer that? Well, I mean, just as a boots on the ground kind of guy, I mean, even my own insurance guys, you know, in a litigious society, no matter what your agreement says, they're going to come get you. And so we just stopped doing them here at Augusta Ranch because they were going to get me no matter what. So there might be some things. Every point of sale can kick out a default kind of waiver to send out there. So that certainly might happen. I think foot pulls on doors are things that are going to be out there. If I'm a golf course operator or a business, I'm going to be doing that. I don't think people are going to want to use their hands to open doors anymore. I'll be curious to see where everybody goes with that. But those are some things. I think keeping the carts a little bit cleaner, those make a lot of sense. These high traffic areas that we touch all the time, those are things that we need to address. The little things that maybe we're doing now. Rakes. I will tell you this, pace of play at Augusta Ranch is much faster right now because there's no rakes. So I don't know, you know, do I eliminate rakes forever now? Because I want people to play faster and, you know, just move your foot or, you know, smooth the dirt out with your foot or just give yourself a better lie, unless it's a tournament. So those are some basics. I mean, we could have a whole show on that, but those are a couple off.
What do you think, Seth? What do you think is going to stick around?
Yeah, I think you know, I agree with you, Don, on some of the, like, you know, like we all were deciding whether we're going to take the flag in or out, you know, after the new rules, right? And I think people are going to get used to having it in, and I think that's going to, you know, I've been told by operators that it's, you know, it takes 15 minutes off a round if everybody leaves it in on every shot, right? And you know, we've always talked about pace of play. Hopefully that's right. I think just as you say, Don, not tournament play, just doing preferred lies and bunkers makes a lot of sense to me. You know. Make it a happier, more fun game. You know, nobody wants to get a plug lie or, you know, in a bad rake job. And, you know, that just makes it easier and more fun. I do think a couple things on the waiver side of things. I think there may be an obligation, and I don't know if it'll become, you know, sort of LEED certified or something. I don't, that's the wrong analogy, but that, you know, you have best practices, kind of some sort of form of best practices in place, right? So that you don't have a general liability. And, you know, I think, you know, that's one thing. And the other thing I'd say is that from an operator's perspective, you know, I think your obligation now is to enforce your rules, right, in a different way. And that's not always comfortable. Our members are pleasers, right? They don't want to go talk to a member about, you know, throwing a club, right? But if they're putting other people at risk by not, you know, using Don's stick, you're going to have to go talk to them. And if people are gathering in an unhealthy or, you know, a scary way, you're going to have to break it up, right? And so I think you're going to have a higher kind of bar of obligation to, you know, the membership, but more importantly to sort of society, that if you're going to be open, you have to enforce it and you have to police it. And I think that will, I think that's a healthy thing, by the way. I think, you know, over time, you know, that's, you know, the entitlement of whatever members or golfers, you know, has probably gone too far in a lot of ways. And clubs have probably, you know, gotten, you know, whatever, wouldn't mind that, you know, creating a little more authority among GMs or whomever it is, it's, you know, or the pro or whoever's in charge of whatever situation. And so I think that will be, I hope that will be more permanent.
So we're seeing, you know, some of our technology folks in the industry are reporting there's obviously a spike in pay in advance, you know, pay online in advance. That could solve a couple problems for golf course operators in many ways. Last week, Don, we talked about how, well, you better watch your credit card processing, you know, costs now, because those are going to go up with, you know, more credit cards being used to pay in advance. But, you know, the whole no-show problem, and a lot of golf courses were gun shy about requiring payment before they show up. There was just something customer service wise that they didn't like that, you know, hey, just show up, you pay at the counter kind of thing. Well, this may force feed, you know, the situation, or force the issue of customers paying in advance. And if they don't show up, hey, they paid, you know, that whole no-show problem of tracking down people and trying to, that may to be somewhat solve a couple problems on the pay in advance. So I think that's going to stick around, is more people getting comfortable with paying for their round of golf in advance. Do you think that's going to stick around?
Absolutely. Even here at Augusta Ranch, so maybe last year we did about 10,000 a month in prepaid tee times. This year before COVID, we were well up over 40%. So that's going to happen for sure. And that literally could be the answer to the disclaimer, or this waiver, is you simply book it on time and you got to click this little box saying that you read through, this waiver, that when you come to the golf course, you're not going to hold the golf course liable for getting COVID or anything else, or injured, or, if we're doing our best practices. So prepaid is going to happen for sure. And I think, passing through that credit card fee is going to happen. I see more gas stations doing it now, cash or credit. Now that they've opened that door, like you said, state by state, Jay, last week, I think that's going to happen. So I fully expect prepaid tee times. Let's be honest, the tee time providers have been doing prepaid tee times for a long time. Nobody's complaining about that. Time to move up into the 21st century. It'll literally help your bottom line.
Yeah. So
do you discount it at all, Don? Do you discount prepays, or would you? Is that to encourage it?
We did initially, but not anymore. We say call, click, or come in. You're going to get the same rate, Seth. Call, click, or come in. Now, there's times when we were pushing our app. The best rate was our app. Obviously, with Golf Cash, you get a 10% kicker. I'm trying to encourage Golf Cash. So I think anytime you want to start changing habits, you've got to have some incentivization there. But after that, like right now, there's no discount. Call, click, or come in. This is our rate. And I think that's where everybody will get to.
Hey, there are two questions here related to one topic that I really, it's meant for Seth, I think. It's about the Ryder Cup. So, and there's a question about, what's going to happen there with the Ryder Cup. But there's a very particular question. I want to read this. It's very interesting. So the Ryder Cup gallery question is 5 months down the road. By that time, 50,000 COVID recovered Americans will have donated plasma to help treat COVID patients. How about giving free badges to the first 3,000 of those people who put their hands up? Ryder Cup only needs that many fans on site to make it electric. That's a very interesting proposition, is to bring in folks that have the antibodies, and would that be a safe audience to have participate in something like this, so that the fans at home can see how they can see what the Ryder Cup is all about? What do you think, Seth?
Well, I somehow got to come up with 3,000 more tickets, because they sold out in like 4 hours. So, that's the problem, right? Like, and that therein lies the rub with the Ryder Cup, right? It's not just a golf tournament; it's much more than that. And I think, look, we're hopeful that we can do it. And it would be an amazing exclamation point at the end of the year. Without the Olympics, it replaces some of that, the nationalism, the tribalism that goes on, and but it is about the fans, right? We're We're willing to do our PGA Championship at Harding Park without fans. If it gave me choose serum, I'd say that's more likely than not that's how it'll be played. Even though Jay Monahan hopes to play with fans before then. We'll see. Question is, will people show up? Even if we can have fans, or would you put your son we can't sit in a golf cart next to somebody, but you're going to sit in a grandstand with another 30,000 people, right? Like it's sort of hard to imagine that we'll be there by August. Can we be there in September with Wisconsin? Possibly. And then the question becomes, but if we can't, then the question becomes, do we postpone, because a Ryder Cup without fans isn't a Ryder Cup. Look, every event without fans is not the same. Augusta wouldn't be the same. We certainly wouldn't be the same. But the Ryder Cup is, as Don can attest, is very different, very unique. Where the first shot on the first day is actually the most important thing, sitting on that first tee, as opposed to the last putt on the last day to a certain degree. And so, we'll debate that, and but it's not exclusively our decision. We own it, obviously, a home Ryder Cup, but we have partners in the European Tour. We have partners at the PGA Tour. We've looked at everything in an industry-wide basis. What's in the best interest of the game, and we'll make that decision. It's an interesting idea on the, getting, people with antibodies or survivors, if you will, to be there. I don't know how you exchange, the 30,000 tickets that have already been sold, or how that would work to those people. I don't think that could happen. But it's kind of a cool idea. I just don't, it's herd immunity, right? But I don't see how it's really practical.
I'll put you in touch with a guy who came up with the question. I know him.
Yeah.
All right. So a question for each of you. So Don, since you've got the 6-foot stick and you can deal with difficult people, there's a question about how do you deal with members that are not following the rules and putting staff in harm's way? Because you've got, you can break up a friendly little crowd. Hey guys, but if you've got these folks that are just being persistent and how they're not following the rules or getting too close to staff or whatever it might be, as an operator, how do you handle discipline with hospitality? And what do you do?
Before I answer that question, give me 30 seconds just to say, as someone who's a member of both of the organizations you guys had up, the collaborative efforts of what you guys have put together in the last 2 weeks is amazing. The nimbleness of park and play of what the NGCOA have put together. And then with Back to Golf, Seth, and the Golf Emergency Relief Fund. I mean, believe me, as a member who needs these organizations, because I want them fraternally or just collegially, for all of my men and women, fellow owners and members, I just want to thank you for that. To answer the question, maybe because I was an umpire a long time ago, the rules are the rules. Don't get mad at me because I'm the one who called it a ball or a strike or safe for out or fair foul. I mean, this stick it's just a way for me to maybe safely do that. Pace of play is a hard thing to make a decision on every day at a golf course. When I was at Eagle Mountain, people are paying $200. And why am I telling a group to play faster? Because there's a group behind them that paid the same dollar amount that's trying to get done before dinner. And so simply just have to look at the greater good of all of this. I'm never trying to ruin your time. I'm trying to make sure that everybody's having a good time. And you know what? And golfers do that. I mean, you talk about the Ryder Cup. I've heard 50,000 people be perfectly quiet for a 3-foot putt because they respect the game. And I think golf fans are going to be the best fans when it comes to social distancing. And I think it'll be amazing to see when galleries are allowed at golf events that they'll space themselves out and nobody's going to be running into each other or rubbing against each other, and there'll be no more chest bumps. But what you have to do as a leader is you have to make tough decisions on behalf of everybody. And it's okay to go to somebody. You got to 86 them if they drink too much. You're going to have to 86 them if they're standing next to people when they shouldn't be, because we have an obligation and a commitment to everybody who gets on that first tee that we're going to make sure that they're safe, our staff is safe, and that the game is played the way it's supposed to be played, which is to have fun. It's not about rules. It's about fun. The rules make it more fun.
There are serve safe certifications and things to help you serve properly and, and all that. So maybe there's going to be a new certification program for owners and operators on how to deal with these kind of difficult situations. We've got some great resources at NGCOA on training, through Whitney Pinnell and the RCS University. They're coming out with great content on how to deal with difficult situations and that were not anticipated, that didn't live before this, right? And so I think we'll see a lot of organizations in golf come out with good stuff on how to deal with this. Seth, I want to ask you about the PGA professional and what you see, if there is this, if this does last a long time and it's difficult for the PGA professionals who are very close to their students and in the teaching context to not be near them for a while. What do you see happening? What is the PGA doing to support this overused phrase, the new normal of coaching and teaching in this distant environment? What do you see happening? Where do you see this
it's a great question. First of all, Don, thanks for your kind comments. It's been a pleasure to be in the room, over the last month or so where people didn't, think about themselves as much as they thought about the industry. You certainly wouldn't set up golf with the structure that we have. It's complicated. You can't explain it to your mother. And yet, we all kind of go into these rooms and say, what are the board of directors of golf? And, how do we take care of our stakeholders, right, in every form? And that was true on the scheduling, and Jay was an amazing partner. And it, was true in this Back to Golf effort. So thanks for the kind words. I think, this is the moment where all these folks have paid their dues for forever and maybe perhaps wondering why at certain times. You want this to be their proudest moment. Susie Whaley said to me when we announced the Golf Relief Fund that was the proudest moment she's ever had as a member, right? And that's why we were put on earth, to make people's lives better and impact. And we'll never have a chance to lead in a more important time or to impact more lives than we have, in these jobs and certainly at this moment. So, that's the way we get up every morning, is how do we get everybody to the other side of this thing? It's nobody's fault. And, how do we do it, collectively, and then how do we do it by our sections, and then how do we do it now one at a time, because we're, through the relief fund figuring that out and who's really in trouble. So, So thank you. Thank you for that. And with that whole introduction, I forgot your question, Jay.
The interaction between the PGA professional and his or her student, and how is that going to change?
So thank you for that. We're working on it. In fact, we have in front of, and if you look through the Back to Golf thing, we've actually recommended the CDC that there is a safe, social distancing component of teaching. So, you can stay more than 6 feet away and say, hey, you're dropping it from the inside, right? Like you don't have to be right on them if you create enough space. And, if you go to certain supermarkets or you go to Whole Foods or wherever, there's demarcations on the floor, right? There's announcements going on, please stay safe, So I think, we'll all be probably wearing masks. We're suggesting that certainly a professional does, and we think that the student should as well. And so we think there is a safe way to teach. We've also been working through our coaching development areas, player development areas to figure out virtual ways, right? And so lots of stuff's going online. I think that's going to get more and more sophisticated. Everybody's thought this thing to Don's point on, pay before you get there thing is, maybe this is that moment where, it really becomes, totally interactive with your coach because you're in your basement hitting into a net because that's all you can do. And yet you're getting a lesson on FaceTime or, some other more sophisticated, systems. So we are looking, we're working on all that. We're working actually with the golf tech guys. Joe Assell, who's a member and a great guy who's built a great business. He's working on the same thing. We're trying to collaborate on, how to create a best practices around that. And so, you're a club professional who's teaching, somebody in New York that then, goes to Florida for the winter. You could continue that relationship in this virtual way, right? So you're going to get more stickiness, I think, with coaches. You're also going to kind of Uber the process, right? So now you can get a lesson at 10 o'clock at night when it's raining out, right? Instead of, got to be there on the range at 1:15 and, if I'm late, I'm going to miss 15 minutes of my lesson, right? You can do it in a much more kind of, convenient way. It becomes Amazon for coaching, right?
Yeah, I think the underpinning of all of these advances, there's no question, is the technology. The human interest is there to continue doing these things, but the question always comes, well, how do we do it? How do we have asynchronous coaching, where I upload my video of my swing and my coach later sees, and gives me advice. The technology's out there now. I think we're going to see a bit of a surge in the adaptation of it. So technology is
by the way, just as another example, like we physically teach people in Port St. Lucie, right? Like that's part of how you become a PGA member, as Don well knows. And we went virtual because we had to. And in 48 hours, we sold out a class that would normally be like 20 to 25 people. It was 150 people, and we taught them all virtually. They loved it. We loved it. It was, a fraction of the price. And so we're saying, like, these are probably permanent changes. Like, these are things that actually make sense. And we'll bring them in for finishing school and make sure we actually, feel and touch these people at some point. But we can now truncate the time it takes. And that's been, up until now, it's been supply. It's been a bigger problem than demand on PGA professionals. And so we think we can, maybe have the time to educate folks. And by the way, more than half the cost, because we're going to be doing it virtually in much bigger scale than we've been able to do, sort of running them through, the farm, if you will.
That's excellent news. So I think let's end the conversation on a real optimistic, positive note, knowing that, human innovation and technology will find a way to help solve some of these a lot of these problems, not just solve problems, but open doors for opportunities, whether it's like this, rewriting the script on how to coach a student in golf, or how to engage with your customer in advance of them coming to the golf course, or a lot of the off-course technology, the gamification and the off-course stuff, and how that's supplementing what's happening. It's all technology driven. That's there to solve problems and open up opportunities for our businesses. And I think we're going to see a lot more. Probably the PGA Merchandise Show and others are going to see probably a lot more of these technology companies getting attention and foot traffic at the shows. Down the road here. So, but hey guys, we're at the 3:51 mark Eastern time. and so 6 minutes over. But guys, I really appreciate your participation, Don, every week. And Seth, thanks for being our guest this week. And you did not embarrass yourself, so congratulations. So much so that we may,
on my resume now.
We may have you back.
Yeah, thanks.
Guys, have a great weekend.
Thanks to everybody out there, and good luck. There's so much pain, and we want to get everybody to the other side. And as Don said, I think we can all come out of this stronger, more united as an industry, more united as our own associations, more united, as at HQ and in our world with our board and every forum, as well as smarter. We may not be financially stronger, but I think we're going to be better for this. That's our journey, and our brand should be burnished if we're leaders here. And as Don said earlier, you got to be smart, but more importantly human. And if you have that brain and a soul, you're probably going to come out of this better than you started. So I appreciate the time, and flattered to be asked. And Don, great to see you again as well.
Yeah, Seth, good to see you.
All right, guys, have a great weekend. See you next week, Don.
All right. Yep.
See you guys.
Take care, everybody.